and really congratulations on a lot of the work that you're doing. I can see a lot of changes in the last year here at the Customs House Maritime Museum. And I think your emphasis on youth and young people is really terrific and well placed. A lot of what we try to do is about engagement, and obviously we need to get those younger people into our sites, into our resources. They're our future, and that's a lot of what we try to do. So I'll try to talk a little bit about the Heritage Area and the Heritage Commission and the difference. I want to see if I can get this little video to work first, just because it's kind of fun, and maybe it will kind of wake you all up. This was done by one of my staff, and let me see if I can get it to work. So that is all places here in Essex County, all around us. It's pretty incredible, the variety of what we have here. Let me see if I can move on beyond that. Sometimes it wants to replay. And now it's looking blank. Let me see. I see it on my screen. So let me try to... Oh dear. Let me see if I can get to move on. Okay. So, let me talk a little bit about, what is a National Heritage Area, and it's really actually two things. It's both a place and it's a concept. And the place here is this region north of Boston. It's Essex County. It's the traditional boundaries of Essex County. 34 cities and towns, 500 square miles. One of the oldest counties in the United States. And it has an enormous amount of resources. We have 2 national parks. We have 1 U.S. Fish and Wildlife National Sanctuary. We have, I think it's 28 National Historic Landmarks, over 500 National Register properties and districts, and it goes on and on, state parks. It's really an incredible area of rich resources, historic, cultural, and natural resources. It's also a concept. Heritage areas, I'll read this thing, are supposed to be partnerships between residents and businesses and governments. And they look to work together to create more livable and economically sustainable regions. And I'll try to talk a little bit about that, how really everything we do is in partnership. And that's why it's great to have James here and all of you partnering with us, because we only can do what we can with lots of partners. So, first of all, the Heritage Area program is something that started in 1984. There are now 62 National Heritage Areas across the country. They're in 35 states, and there's 1 in St. Croix, Virgin Islands. They really vary. They vary from large natural regions. Some of them look very much like national parks. I think we have here Alaska, I think that's the last Green Valley, New Mexico, and then the Heritage Area in Washington State. So a lot of variety in landscapes, and a lot of variety in themes and stories. And that's probably really the thing that Heritage Areas try to emphasize are themes and history and stories, including coal mining, which is, I think you've seen there in West Virginia. Dayton Aviation is in one of these pictures, so early aviation that was actually developed in, the Wright brothers were in Dayton, Ohio. They just came to Kitty Hawk to try out their planes. Obviously stories, particularly now, the Revolutionary War, there's a couple of heritage areas that really focus on that, and the Civil War, and even the steel industry. The last picture there is this, you can see this, the rivers of steel outside of Pittsburgh, and they have an incredible site with these old steel mills that they do some amazing programming in. So heritage areas are really about engagement and telling the stories and working with people on the ground. So they are like national parks in that they go through a process of identifying a boundary, identifying themes and stories and resources, and then getting an act of legislation approved by the U.S. Congress. But after that, they really don't resemble parks very much because they don't have federal ownership, they don't have rules and regulations, they have usually quite small staffs, and usually big territories, and so they have to work cooperatively, and they have to work in partnership, and they have to work from the grassroots level up. And so it's pretty interesting what an effective program it is, because you really are on the ground working with people, helping them preserve what's important to them, tell the stories that are important to them. I remember I visited several heritage areas, and early on I went to Delaware and Lehigh, which is the story of anthracite coal. And I have to say it sounded pretty boring. Coal. But one of the things we did there is we got to go down into a coal mine with a coal miner. And it was absolutely fascinating. I mean, it was such a memorable experience. So, even the industry of the work, it's really fascinating. I mean, another time we went to a nail factory. No idea, but just really fascinating. So besides beautiful places and culture, at least, even the industry is really interesting. So in this area, let me talk a little bit about the establishment of the Essex National Heritage Area. In about, I want to say, 1990, we formed the Essex Heritage Ad Hoc Commission. And this came out of work. At that time, I was working in the city of Salem, or something called the Salem Partnership, which was a public-private partnership focused on revitalizing the city of Salem. It had a lot of potential. It had a little national park. It has a lovely museum, PB Essex Museum. It has a state college. But it really was down the dumps. It was really having a difficulty, and as Newburyport had, a little bit earlier than that, I think. I think Newburyport was sort of coming up by that time, but Salem was still struggling. And we were very intrigued by the work that Paul Songus had done up in Lowell, building a partnership with the National Park Service up there. And not necessarily having the park take over everything, but doing sort of a joint venture with the park, and having the park own some things and do some projects, but the private sector doing other ones. And we invited Paul to come to Salem and talk with us, and one thing led to another thing, and we finally, we had the park. We had the Salem Maritime National Historic Park, actually the first national historic park in the Park Services system, brought in 1938. And before that, the parks had only been the natural resource areas, and this was the first historic park. And so we thought, well, maybe we could build off of this. So we got the park to come. At that time, it was a really energetic superintendent there. And so the park agreed to do a study. They said they would take a look at what kind of partnerships or projects could come out of a partnership between the city of Salem and maybe some people, other resources in the region, and the National Park Service. And the study was published in about 1991, called the Salem Project, a Study of Alternatives. And we looked at 4 alternatives, one very focused on just right around the park, another one looking at the city of Salem, another one looking at a much broader region, and the 4th option was looking at a real regional approach, saying, you have this national park here, you have the actual second national park at Saugus Iron Works, and you have really hundreds of very nationally significant resources, historic resources, natural resources. It is an incredible story that can be told in Essex County, but it's a lived-in landscape. You can't own it all. You can't, nobody has the resources, and you wouldn't want to try to take it all over. So why don't you look at this sort of partnership? And they gave it's a pretty broad, not all that very specific outline, but it was very inspiring. And so we said, oh, okay, we'll try it. And so we started down the path of trying to create we didn't know there was this idea that it just started to be called a heritage area. So we decided, well, let's try for that. And we were able to team up with Senator Kennedy, who was sort of at the height of his power at that time, and terribly interested.
Should I hold my question?
Oh, would you?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I thought, but you could hear me, all right, okay. And so he was not going to run for president anymore. He was at the height of his power in the Senate, and he loved history, and he loved ships. So we had a really good combination here. So we reached out, and we, being a Salem partnership, and some of the business leaders, I know Eastern Bank was involved, Salem 5, I really started to team up with other leaders in this region, such as Bryon Matthews, who was no longer mayor of Newburyport, was still very influential in the region. Real regional thinkers. Peter Sheridan was mayor of Peabody, but very much about regionalism and how can we work together. Tom Costin had been former mayor of Lynn, also saying with like sort of how, because we operate in such distinct communities in the Northeast, in this region. Every community is distinct. It's one of our charms. Each community is different, but it's also so difficult to work together because everything stops at the town boundary. So they were very intrigued by this idea of getting more out of our historic and cultural resources and also doing something that would help us act together a little more regionally. So we worked together, and these pictures, there are a couple pictures here of Bryon Matthews, Mike Costello's there, Maria Miles. That was an event, a wonderful event we did at the Blue Ocean Room called the Heritage Hero event, just honoring some of their work. But we worked together on legislation, and in 1996, the Essex National Heritage Area got attached to an Omnibus Parks and Public Lands Act that passed us and I think it was 6 other national heritage areas. And legislation formed both the area, this is the boundary, again, that boundary is Essex County, 34 cities and towns from Gloucester to Lawrence, from Salisbury down to Saugus. But it also specified that the ad hoc commission should form the Essex National Heritage Commission, which we now call Essex Heritage because that name was much too long and complicated. So that's how Essex Heritage got going. First the act passed, area was designated, and then about a year and a half later, the nonprofit commission was formed with the help of all of our friends and politicians and business leaders. And that's what's kind of the entity that sort of runs the heritage area, but I'll tell you a little bit more about that. So the heritage area, just quickly, is this region. It also had 3 sort of designated themes. One was the early colonial settlement, as being very strongly represented here. Maritime industries, maritime trade, particularly Asian trade, the great Asia sail, the burst of activity that happened here after the American Revolution, when our sea captains went out and established trading routes around the world, really remarkable. And then the early Industrial Revolution, partly fed by those fortunes they made at sea, and represented particularly along the Merrimack Valley and the big mills and the transformation from little home industries to manufacturing. The 4th theme that obviously was sort of admitted and we're trying to do more with is all the settlement that happened before 1626 and the indigenous people, and that still has quite a ways to go, I would say, but certainly is very interesting. So we have the region, we have these themes, what do we do with it? Well, as we talked a little bit, we are very much about trying to connect people and places. Just because these historic sites have always been here doesn't mean they always will be here if we don't get engaged, if we don't take care of them. And as you all know, the number of people interested, particularly in historic sites, is a little bit dwindling. We're getting a little bit older, a lot of volunteers, and so it's very important to engage younger people and be relevant to younger people, and make these places work for them. They not just learning history, but also make them, whether it's fun, a place to come on a winter's day, try out the boat or something, or just somehow relate to them. And I'll tell you a little bit about how we're trying to do that. And then we're also looking, as part of that, making sure these stories are relevant, that it's not all just about white sea captains. And in fact, as we dig into some of those stories, and as some of this history is coming to light, partly because as archives get digitized, a little bit easier to do it, the stories are fascinating, and it's so much richer and so much more interesting to have these really complicated stories of all these different people and types of people, and who went to sea and who didn't go to sea, and things like we're doing some research with the American Revolution and all the talks about freedom and liberty, and then all the African Americans who say, well, what about us? And use that language to do freedom suits. Use it in the courts to win freedom, usually for their kids. A lot of times they were born free, but somehow one or two of their kids would end up enslaved. And so trying to get their children out of slavery. And many were successful. It took a lot of bravery to do that. And then we're trying to also work this stuff, these themes, these stories, more into the educational system. So it's not just getting people to come to these places and these museums, but also sort of getting the educators, teachers, and schools to be more comfortable, or just bringing that stuff in so it's more part of the curriculum or teaching. So with that, let me just tell you a few of the projects that you're probably familiar with or that we do. Again, we work in partnership with people, so sometimes we're the leader and sometimes we're not. Sometimes you know we're involved, sometimes you don't know. So I think the Border to Boston Rail Trail is a really good example of a project that we've worked on for 25 years, I think, 24 years. And sometimes we've been really active and sometimes we've been less active, but we've always looked at, how can we bring value to this? How can we fill in the pieces? What are the things that we can do to help? And sometimes we've been in the right place at the right time and been able to bring in federal money. Other times it's just been something like helping with a sign or doing a presentation. I had a lot of fun a couple weeks ago. I did a presentation for NASDOT, the Massachusetts Department of Transportation. And it's wonderful to see the transformation in that state agency where they're now supporting trails and are advocates for trails. So it was really fun to talk to them about how important volunteers are, and you start to see the engineers there say, yeah, no, we see that, so the volunteerism. I want to give a little shout out to Bill Steelman, who's in the audience, who was the one that brought this project to Essex Heritage, and it was his baby for a long time, and he did a ton of work, particularly up here, to make sure, and you have some of the best parts of the trail are up here in Newburyport and Salisbury. Before coming over here tonight, my husband and I took a really nice walk along the Salisbury Trail. So, thank you, Bill, and thank you for coming tonight. How do you know all this, Bill? So, another project, hang on. Another project I hope you're familiar with is something we call Trails to Sails. And this year was its 23rd year. And this is a program we stole from another heritage area. That was a really good idea. It's grown to 16 days now at the end of every September. We had, I think, 200 events this year. And it's something that's really designed to try to get residents that live here to go to all these places that they drive by all the time. They always mean to visit, but they never do. So to get people out of their cars, to get people on trails, to get people into museums like this, because it's free. It's also a great opportunity for sites like yours and other places to try things. You don't have to do your whole tour, you don't have to do your whole thing, but you could try new programs. You can use it to advertise what's coming up, what programs you have coming up. You can do it even sell memberships, that's fine. It's whatever it takes to try to get people engaged and interested in what you have to offer, because obviously when people go into these places, they always say, I didn't realize there was so much here. And I have to admit, I always do trails and sales. I try to do multiple events. I still go to places where I say, ooh, I've never been here before. I didn't know this was here. It's fascinating. It is fascinating what's up here. And there's also sometimes little special things like Topsfield Town Hall opens their clock, which is still mounted by hand. It's really fascinating. Gloucester opens their tower. There's all sorts of stuff. Anyway, it's really fun. I hope you all will keep working with us on it and doing programs here, but also really encourage you to go out and do Trails to Sails. We put together a pretty fat guide every year, which you're welcome to. We give it out to libraries. We try to get it out there. Our members get it sent to them. But we also have a very robust website that tells what's going on. And we look to try to design it for all sorts of ages and types of people. And we actually tell you whether it's good for kids or not. So I'm going to sort of talk a little bit about teaching and this whole engagement with teachers. We have a program, which this one was really copied on one that the National Park Service had started, and then we've really taken it much further, and we're now teaching the National Park. We've done some regional teaching, and we did our education person did a big project out in Colorado with teachers with park staff, interpretive staff from all over the country. But this is how do you use real places and resources in teaching? How do you use it? What kind of projects can you do that get kids to ask questions, get them engaged? How do you get kids voice? How do you get them a voice so that you're not teaching, but you're sort of suggesting or you're setting things up so the kids explore? And how do you do that in schools? So we spend a week with usually about 20 teachers every summer. They sign up. It's a free course. If they want credits, they have to pay something, but we have a discount with Salem State. And they get to mess around. So you see in these pictures, they're climbing around Cranes Beach. I forget what the middle project is, but this one, they're getting mucked up in the mud by the Salem Maritime site. And they get to do all these, try these things out. And they work on trying to, how would this relate to the math program I'm teaching? How would this relate to some history or education or art projects? And you'd be surprised. I mean, really, there are relations. And then we work with teachers. They give us a proposal at the end of the year. Very often they work in teams. And then at the end of the summer, and then we will work with them all through the school year with mentoring and checking in and working with them and other teachers on how their projects are going and if they get stuck. And the mentoring is important because these teachers get really fired up. They get really excited when they're out in these places and they see what's here and all the kind of different ways you can teach from using these tools. And then they get in this classroom and they have to teach them the curriculum and they have to do the MCAS and have all the stuff. Excuse me. So a little bit of help during the winter time we found very useful, and then we'll bring all the teachers together and we'll compare what they're doing, and very often we can capture some of their curriculum and we put it online for them so other teachers can look for it. And we have found this has an enormous impact on the teachers and on the students. And before COVID, we used to be able to bring some of the teachers together with their students, and I'd love to get back to that. Because for me, it was one of the most exciting evenings when you had the teachers come in with their students, and it could be grade school, it could be middle school, high school, and the kids would do the presentation. They did a vernal pool study, and they measured all the water quality, and they measured the animals in it, and they did all this, and then they went to their board of selectmen and said, we want a sign for this, we want an interpretive sign, and they get so fired up with doing something that really relates to their community, or doing a project about the history of shoemaking in their community, and then presenting it to maybe the middle schoolers, and they present it to and do a project with the younger grades. So we have found it. When we first started this, we did some direct school work, and we still do a little of that. But we found that working with the teachers, we can have such a wide impact. So we do work with young people though directly, and one of the things we do is called Future Leaders, and this was a national park program, which again has gone through different iterations, and it now is that we hire the students, usually about anywhere from 15 to 20, to do work in the summertime as interns. They're paid internships where they do projects at the national park, and then we do some enrichment, whether it's it's resume writing, financial skills. We do some usually should go to the State House and talk about, you know, state government and how it works. So it's a combination of developing job expectations also, showing up on time, reporting all this, job skills, and then social and community skills. And the kids are usually with us for 8 to 10 weeks. Sometimes if they can stay, if they have the time, they can stay on with us during the winter, a few on Saturdays. But most come in the summer, and we typically have kids that come for 3 or 4 summers. They learn leadership skills, and so then they come and they mentor other kids, and they're leaders with those kids in groups. And they work at Salem Maritime and Saugus Iron Works. And then sometimes we will go to another site and do a program there. But recently we were able to gain a little bit of money, and we were able to do some future leaders at other heritage sites where we teamed up with different historic sites around the region and helped them hire kids to work in the spring and summertime. And they on a variety of things. It could be museum exhibitions, archiving, maintenance, painting. It could be visitor services. So really a wide variety of things. And that has been a lot of fun to see these kids. Again, this is all, they earn money, they get some job skills, but they connect to these sites too. I mean, that is what's so cool. So like our state representative in Salem is a gentleman named Manny Cruz, and he was a future leader at the park site. So when he comes up to the park, he has really fond memories, and he's just a big booster for the history and the heritage of the area. So that's really been nice. I said earlier we do a little bit about these teaching hidden histories and looking at hidden histories. I've really enjoyed a lot of that, which is looking for these stories that are not well known. Looking for Black patriots and indigenous people, as well as women, and all the role that all these other people besides the generals played in our history. And then also, how do you teach some of that? Because some of that history is not so great. It's pretty hard, some of it. There was a lot more northern slavery than I ever realized growing up. There was a lot of the international trade that we did that did involve slave ships. Slavery was not just in the South. We did participate in it. So figuring out how to tell some of those stories to kids and help them understand it. And it's particularly helpful when these stories are local. It really helps the kids sort of make that connection better than if it's way out there, some story about some place they don't know anything about. Now, the last year or so, and this is just another little project we've added, is the Revolutionary War 250 is coming up. Most of the country is focused on 2026, but we've been focusing on 2024 and 2025 because that's where really the activity happened here in Essex County. Early on, we were extremely active. We did a lot of, obviously we had the Lexington and Concord, but before that, we had the Tea Party, and in between there was a lot of activity, and General Gage moved the seat of government from Boston up to Salem. There was a skirmish that almost led to the war and led with Leslie's retreat in Salem, and a lot of other activities, as well as breaking away and forming the provincial Congress that was so important to setting up our new government, and training militias so that when the confrontation really did start in Lexington and Concord, we were prepared, and the patriots were prepared because in October 7th, 1774, they had met in Salem, and then they had gone and met in Concord and Lexington, and they had started, and not only did they form a new breakaway government and elect John Hancock as president, but they started sending out messages to all the towns all around here saying, you need to arm, you need to train militia. This is what you need to have. This is how the training should look. And pushing to get the training done and pushing for finding money in our merchants. All of you, merchants, we all went out and they looked for money, for armaments, for gunpowder. They used those trading connections in cod and in goods in Europe to help secure a lot more of the armaments that I think we realized when I was studying this history from not just France, but also from Spain. So very key role that this region played. And I know you guys have some planning to do that you're doing with Old Newbury, and so I want to make sure that's on our calendar. We have a website, we have a calendar, we're trying to gather all the events that people are doing and publicize them, as well as putting on some events ourselves with partners. Just a few other things. Coastal Scenic Byway is another one of our projects. I think you've probably seen some of the signs along the coast of our region, and we have these 9 kiosks to explain what the Coastal Byway is and some of the really wonderful resources here. This is a project I would love to spend more time and energy on, but we're doing a lot of other things, but at least we've marked that this is a really beautiful coastline, and we'd love to do more with it. We also do stuff with visitor services. I said our primary audience are the residents of this region, but obviously all of us and many of our businesses depend on tourism. So we do some work with tourism. We have a desk at the visitor center, the regional visitor center run by the National Park Service in Salem. We have this large map. We have these information rack cards and a pull-out map that you can show where all the other towns are, because we're happy to have people stay longer and travel around. We're not just trying to keep them in Salem. We really want them to go other places. And we have this network of cooperating visitor centers, of which you have one here, and I'm delighted that you guys have done some renovations there. We have more information there, so that's great. And we have a system of signs. Not all of them are still up, unfortunately, because it was a one-time grant, but we are always looking for more money to do more on the slides. And then we do have this one historic property called Baker's Island Light Station. We didn't really set out to own it. We got it because we were working with the National Park Service, and the Salem Maritime site was interested in the lighthouse. It took so long for us to get the lighthouse that we went through several superintendents, and the superintendent that was in place when we got the lighthouse said he wanted nothing to do with it. So we started managing it. And now we rather enjoy it. We've been managing for 14 years, working on it and repairing it, and also opening up for visitation and overnight stays. And I think it does take time and effort and money, but it certainly gives us an appreciation for all that you guys are doing with these old properties, and how much work and how much love and how much attention, how many volunteers it takes to keep these places going. So let me just quickly tell you a little bit about this affiliation with the National Park Service. I have mentioned that their Park Service and the heritage areas are a program within the Park Service. So the Park Service has not only parks, and actually has 430 parks, and they're not all the ones that start with Y. It has a lot of parks, and some are small and some are big. Also has programs. Wild and Scenic Rivers is a program. Heritage areas are now a program. So that means they give us a little bit of money, less than they used to, but we get a little bit of money through them, and they give us some suggestions, sometimes some regulations, but not much. But we have this special relationship with them, and there are things that we can do that they can't do, and the things that they can do that we can't do. And so, because our office is in Salem and the Salem Maritime site is there, we've had a very close working relationship with the last 7 or 8 superintendents. And that's kind of how we got the Tall Ship Friendship to come to Newburyport. Unfortunately, this was a long time ago. I think it was 2006. I don't know if any remember it. I thought it was spectacular. You see a tall ship come into this harbor and look huge. When out at sea, they don't look that big. When they come into the harbor, they look gigantic. I think we had 10,000 people that weekend that went aboard. In the middle here is a little picture of it was a pirate group, all the little groups of kids that came as pirates and learned about privateering and pirates and the difference, I hope. And it was terrific. So right now, the friendship is dear to my heart because I was involved in helping to raise some of the money for it. The federal government did not supply all the money. And Ted Kennedy was very instrumental in getting the money for the ship. But I remember he called me up, because he used to call when he got these grants, he'd call up and said, I have wonderful news for you. I got, I think it was $4.5 million. And you only have to raise $1.5 million. And I'm running this, two-person nonprofit, and we, oh boy. We did eventually raise the money. It wasn't easy, but we did. And the ship got built. unfortunately, she's had some design problems, she's had some issues, she's under renovation, she's been under renovation for quite a long time. She is scheduled to go to Gloucester this month, and she is supposed to be, they're really, really pushing for her to be done, hopefully get completed by 2026, which is Salem's 400th anniversary, the settlement of Salem. So the Park Service says they can do it, said they will do it. They've given the superintendent the money to do it. That's a big change. That's been one of the delays. So whether she'll sail right after that, I don't know. But I think the goal should be to try to have her come back to Newburyport in 2028. It'd probably be realistic. So I think we should. And so I'm going to just finish though with a question. Just a couple more things coming up in the rest of 2024 and 2025. We do have a photo contest. These are some winners from this region. The deadline is December 13th. You go to essexheritage.org to submit your photographs. They just need to be taken this year. And we have 3 different categories, a youth category, and some nice cash prizes as well as gift cards and stuff. And I love this because you have all these wonderful pictures of Essex County, of this region, and people's perspective of what they love and what they think is important. And it's really great to see. We also have partnership grants. James talked about those. They're small, but there's custom towns, but I hope useful. And those will be coming up. Let's see, the grant cycle opens, I think, January 3rd or thereabouts. Applications will be due mid-February. We've tried to make, over the years, the forms simpler and simpler. If it's not simple enough, let me know. But we're working on them. But please apply. And they can go for building renovation, but they can also go for programs and educational and interpretive programs and signage, archives, and even accessibility issues. We do have these events coming up in 2025 around the Revolutionary War. We are working with the City of Salem on Leslie's Retreat, which is February 22nd and 23rd, when almost the American Revolution broke out, but everybody was too reasonable, and they didn't fire any shots, and they compromised. The British were at this bridge, and they were looking for cannons in Salem, and the drawbridge was up, and Leslie said, I can't go back until I go across the drawbridge, so he was allowed to go across the drawbridge. Once he promised that he would go across, he would look around, and he would leave. By that time, there were no cannons that close. They had moved, so no confrontation. Too bad for Salem. Maybe we'd be known for that instead of the witches, wouldn't it? We just finished up with Halloween. It was, I don't know. Then the Battle of Bunker Hill is going to be reenacted in Gloucester. Why Gloucester? Because they're no longer doing it in Charlestown. And it's Stage 4 Park in Gloucester. You have the water, you have the hill. We think it's going to be really cool. Lots of reenactment groups are really interested. They see this as the major battle. There's going to be Lexington and Concord, of course, but the next major battle, and probably one of the biggest ones, because there's some more room there. It's easier to get to. So we're in the planning for that. I know Newburyport has the Road to Revolution, but I don't have your dates yet. So hope I'll see those soon. That's right.
Yes, absolutely. Once we get the contract.
And then, I know I don't have the contract either. That was coming. And then just a reminder, again, trail sales coming up. It's not too soon to list your events because the print deadline for the booklet is in June. And this is a trails and sales event, which I'd love to see come back. That is how traditional haystacking was done. I don't know who did it anymore. I don't remember, but it was really a really wonderful demonstration. That's it. So I know somebody had questions. I'm happy to take questions.
Do you want to talk a little bit more about the plans for the Revolution celebrations? Because there are a number of organizations and some folks involved in the Museum of Old Newbury here and Congregational Church, and we're looking at a fairly robust series of programs running from probably January, February, all the way up through, well, probably
that's great. I mean, unfortunately, there's very little funding, which has been really a disappointment. There's the mock grant that you guys and all Newbury got, and we got a bit for the Attleboro Hill. So that part's been disappointing. We really thought there might be some grant money to fund some of this, but what we can do is we do have quarterly meetings where people can talk about the projects they're doing and the programs they're doing. We're really happy to try to promote them, list them on the website, promote them on social media, do whatever we can to help you promote them so you get a much wider audience. We're very interested in doing that. Love to sort of talk to you about the events and see if we can think of other ways to add to it, or bring new partners to add to it, or take your ideas and work with other people to make it a bigger project or something. I know like Linfield's is doing kind of a lighting at the cemeteries. I think that would be a nice thing to do in more places. I'd love to see people do stuff around some of the military history and all that. But yeah, I know we'd love to know more and see what we can do to help, and certainly get on the website and help us publicize it.
Great.
I mean, again, we see this as the main period for things that really happened here as anniversaries. Going forward in 2026, a lot of the focus is on 4th of July. We're looking at doing more at that period, probably with talks and lectures, and I don't know what, but it's about some of the maritime history and the privateering and things like Glover's Regiment, which are so important to Washington. So our troops moved out of this area, but we still did stuff on ships, and our people were still very important, working in other parts, waging war in other parts of the East Coast. So, but any of those stories we also have on our website. We're trying to put more stories. We're trying to put more facts. We do have the start of a witness houses buildings that were there during the Revolutionary War. I think that'd be interesting for people, and that stuff will keep going. So here for 2026, we still keep going with that because I think that's interesting to both residents and visitors.
Just to follow up there, Bob is heading up a parade. You may not all know this yet, but on June 28th of 2025, we'll assemble at the Frog Ponds, and everybody's invited. We're hoping to hand out about 1,000 tri-cord hats to kids, and have kids dress up as Benjamin Franklin and Washington, etc. And then we'll march down, and we'll get to Market Square. So it's going to be a great time. But it would be terrific to get your help, just with your network reenacting groups that we should reach out to provide some color and.
Well, we should talk because they're getting really committed. So
I'm giving you my card right now.
But also they have to poke me on it. But yeah, they are obviously getting really booked.
Yeah.
But sure, no, I think we know a number of groups and stuff.
Yeah, we're actually trying to sneak in between Bunker Hill, which is mid-June, and July 4th, even though
Right.
July 4th is a year out, it's,
Right.
75. But we're trying to look at getting many reenactors to come down, like James said, the Frog Pond, and coming down our State Street, our main street, and saluting some of the historic houses in town, and ending up here. We just want to reach out to the acting groups and the Lexington groups and the Gloucester groups and the Swampscott groups.
So do you have a key leader here, a historian, or someone who's in the reenactment community here? Because that would be helpful to.
He kind of moved out.
How far away did he move?
He's in southern New Hampshire now, but
Or would he come back and help?
he might. He's more of a Civil War guy.
Okay. Because I found they all know each other.
I know.
And you get a contact, and you do better because they want to vouch, someone to vouch that it's authentic. Now,
Right.
different people are interested in different kinds of authenticity. Some of them don't want it totally pure. They don't want to be wearing wool in the middle of summer. Others are very purist. So, but having someone of kind of right kind, I mean, I think I like what you want to do, but I think if we could find the right person to team you up with, would be helpful on that.
But anyhow, I mean, that's kind of one of our main,
Sure.
events, for the, the 250th.
Great.
And then in 1776, we have, other ideas that are just percolating right now, such as July 10th, a rider comes into town to read the Declaration of Independence. So you can, recreate that,
Yeah.
but that's 2 years out.
Yes. I hear our governor rides horses. Because when we were down,
Yeah,
I missed that, so I was trying to catch the train, but she apparently got up on Paul Revere's horse.
Yep.
Rode around, so can we get the governor over it?
And she has some local ties here.
Oh,
She does. Yeah.
You ought to try that.
I have ties to her local ties.
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question. This is very interesting. I never knew the distinction between the heritage centers and national parks and things. Are most heritage centers around the country as big as a county, or are they sites? And is this one about bigger than the others, or are they all about the same?
They really, really vary. So I think the one there's one called Silos and Smokestacks, I think it's 25 counties. There's ones in, there's one that's in Wheeling, West Virginia, it's just a portion of the community. So I think we're kind of medium to small at 500 square miles. But we have 850,000 people here now. There's one in Utah, Nevada, that I think is 16,000 acres, and has 23,000 people in it. So they really vary. One of the things I didn't say was, we like to say, you see one heritage area, you have seen one heritage area, because they're all different.
Yeah.
But that's what, to me, is so fascinating about the program, because even though we're all different, this principle of partnership and leveraging a little bit of public money with a lot of private money, a lot of volunteerism, works in so many different places. I also didn't say that not every heritage area is run by a nonprofit. Some of them are run by a county government or state government, or a couple of them are run by universities. But again, if you have the right people who really value building relationships and partnerships, these things work, because the people on the ground feel listened to, they feel empowered, and they come with their passion for whether it's volunteering, take care of a place, or tell their stories. And nothing is better than that. It's great for teaching, it's great for tourism, it's great for engagement, where people really talk from the heart about what's important and the things that they really value. And it's also in this very fractured country, it's a great way to build relationships. And heritage areas have enjoyed a lot of bipartisanship. I'll just give one short story. So at the end of 2022, we had to, heritage areas up until then had always been authorized by individual pieces of legislation. And the Park Service said, we can't stand this. You got to get a national bill passed. We want a program, official program. They like these kind of official things. And we had times when certain congressmen or certain senators tried to pick off heritage areas. Conservatives wanted liberal ones, and vice versa. So we had tried to get this national bill passed. I think it was for 7 or 8 years. At the end of 2022, everything had gone past, and we had tried to get attached to the defense bill, which is usually a pretty good place to get attached, because they always pass the defense bill. We tried to get attached to other stuff. Didn't get anything. It was, just a few days before Christmas, and we were told you have one possible chance. You have to get the Senate has to agree to let the bill go forward. You have to get unanimous consent in the Senate, and you have to get a 3/4 vote of the House of Representatives for your own little standalone bill. It's the layer of chair. And you have to get it, tomorrow. That is it. And we did. It was absolutely amazing because everybody from all the different heritage areas, whether they're conservative places or liberal places or in between, called, and they had all their, you know, farming friends and heritage friends, and school teachers called, and we got, I think 93% of the Congress voted for it and passed. Nobody, I mean, the staff person I've done a lot of work with said he'd only seen that happen once before in his 35 years working on the Hill. So it is an very interesting program. I don't know if Bill wants to add to it, because you worked with about 10 years. 15, sorry. Time flies. Is there anything else?